Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here with a detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Friday, June the 21st, 2024. This is a live version edition of this discussion. This will become a video once I am done with it, and I'll get to your guys' question at the end of this discussion as well. So this will be an hour live stream or so, maybe a little longer than that to account for those questions that you might have. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 true color visible satellite imagery from tropicaltidbits.com. There will be a link in the description below this video, below this live stream. If it's not there now, I will put it there after the stream is over with. What we do have, we have a couple of disturbances in the deep tropics. Well, one in the subtropics here, moving towards Georgia. Not a big system at all. Possibly a tropical depression at the very most, but nothing too significant with that one. We're keeping an eye on this one yet again. It's going to be a wash and rinse kind of thing. Rinse or wash, we should say. Another disturbance moving over the western Gulf of Mexico. And yet again, this is going to bring more heavy rainfall, more coastal impacts for southern Texas into the northeastern Mexico portion there of the coast of the Gulf. And then right now we're seeing a lot of activity over the Yucatan. We'll look at that in just a bit. But also what we don't see is a lot of Saharan dust out here, and there's more to this Saharan dust than what you might think. And we'll be looking at the models here in a little bit on this discussion on why I think we're not going to see any tropical development once these two disturbances move on shore. And I think we're going to have a pretty good, almost month-long break of tropical activity for the time being because of what we're going to see. So that's a look at the tropics. Otherwise, things look quiet out there in the deep tropics of the main development region. When we take a look at the national hurricane, actually, when we look at the floater, let's kind of zoom in on these disturbances really quickly. So we'll go to 92L. And this is loading, so give it time. So we can see that little naked swirl right there. You can get an idea. It's already about ready to move on shore. Looks like a tropical depression, a low scale or kind of a low-level cloud kind of hurricane-ish looking thing with those spiral bands that are rotating, but really nothing too significant with that. When we zoom in even closer on that disturbance, we can see with what it actually looks like. In fact, there's barely any precipitation falling with this, and any precipitation is falling most likely within this band that rolled on shore. We have another band of heavier rain that's getting ready to move on shore, and there is our disturbance, 92L. I really don't think it possesses a well-defined center enough for this to become a tropical depression, which is good news. We can save and grace for that, but still we have a couple of disturbances that we're watching with some deep convection happening to the south of that. But right now, it doesn't look all that big of a deal. But what we will be watching, though, is again the one over here in the Gulf. So therefore, when we take a look at our, when we take a look here at our 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook here from the National Hurricane Center, and we can see there's our disturbance right there. Invest 92L satellite imagery and National Weather Service Doppler radar data indicate that the showers and thunderstorms associated with a well-defined low pressure area centered about 80 miles southeast of Brunswick, Georgia, continue to lack the necessary organization for the low to be considered a tropical cyclone. Recent Air Force reconnaissance missions that flew through the system indicate that winds of 35 miles an hour are occurring in association with the low pressure system. Only a small increase in convective coverage would likely lead this to a tropical cyclone. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if things actually change. When we look at the western Gulf of Mexico, there's a 60% chance of tropical formation with that system. So again, regardless of tropical development, some heavy rainfall, gusty winds, and some flood impacts are going to be expected. Some of those are still finishing up with Alberto, with our second system coming along. That will keep those flood impacts potentially going. If they're minor, we'll likely see an increase in that again. So a lot of you are saying that there's going to be more tropical formation. Oops, let me bring up the proper window for that. There we go. This should help out a lot. So we are here, all right? And a lot of you need to understand that some of, I'm not going to name those YouTubers out there, but some people are saying we're going to see a lot of tropical, or we could see more tropical formation in the Caribbean and in the Lesser Antilles next week and the week after. That does not seem very likely right now because, one, climatology, and two, Saharan dust, and three, we still got a lot of shear out there in the main development region of the Caribbean, including for the eastern central main development regions. We'll be looking at that here in a little bit and looking at some models that back that up. But right now, this is where we're at. We're not seeing a whole lot, actually, probably even here. So we're coming out of a hump, this little hump. That's our Alberto that we saw. And then we're going to see a little bit more downward in terms of activity. And this fits extremely well with climatology. And then usually by the middle of July, we might have to start watching for more development. Maybe as Cape Verde season kind of starts getting going out of Africa and those waves get more organized. And then really, when we get into August, that's when climatology really heats things up and we really start getting a lot of named storms. And it is going to be interesting to see how active this season will end up being once we start that increase. And that usually isn't until mid-August, with a slight increase in activity usually in July. And usually June and July are quiet months in terms of tropical formation. So I'm not too concerned about it at all. I don't think we're going to see anything much in the deep tropics, at least through the middle of July. All right, so when we take a look at our upper ocean heat content, it is definitely pretty significant out there. We're still seeing record amounts of upper ocean heat content, a lot of heat being stored in the oceans, especially in the Caribbean and in the deep tropics of the main development region. Where we're seeing the highest amounts is from the loop current in the Gulf of Mexico all the way across the Haitian Peninsula, as well as the Dominican Republic into Jamaica, as well as the Cayman Islands, the Island of Youth, as well as the Bay of Youth, including for the Lesser Antilles. We're seeing a lot of upper ocean heat content, something that we have not seen yet this early in the hurricane season. And we'll see if this gets used up and these storms take full advantage of this upper ocean heat content, and showing us that we are looking at record-breaking upper ocean heat content anomalies, folks. This is pretty scary to think about when you see numbers like this. This is not a good situation at all, all right? Because when you think about these anomalies, one right here, these are off the charts. These are well above average, climatology speaking. It's only mid-June, and we're seeing upper ocean heat content that is not seen usually until early or even mid-September. So we're nearly about 2 to 3 months ahead of schedule as far as upper ocean heat content anomalies go in the ocean. And a lot of this heat will be used or could be used for some very intense, violent hurricanes this hurricane season. So now let's take a look at the GFS model, and there is some symptoms that can give us a clue that this season is going to be a dead one for a while, at least until late August. I don't think we're going to see much until then. Let's go forward here on the GFS model, and we can see, of course, big sprawling ridge of high pressure. You can see it here, this big dome of ridging that is overhead across the central northern Atlantic. We got the easterly winds that shape up over the deep tropics, so that keeps a lot of thunderstorms to the south, a very suppressive phase of any tropical formation out here in the deep tropics and in the Caribbean. Nothing to really worry about. Now, some YouTubers are already starting to scream at this little guy down here, and I talked to one of those people last night that this is not going to develop. This is not going to develop at all. I am not concerned about it by any means, but YouTubers, of course, are already starting to say, oh, we're going to have Caribbean development. We're going to have Lesser Antilles development. No, I don't think it's going to happen. All right. Please be careful, folks, on which source you find on the internet on that, because people are going to say, oh, we got a tropical wave. This could develop into a tropical storm or a tropical depression. I don't think it's going to do much at all. It's just a little wave out there rippling in the atmosphere. That's not going to do much other than it's going to bring enhanced rainfall to the Trinidad and Tobago area. Right down here is where we're going to have the best chances of any rainfall or any gusty winds. All right, but tropical development is looking highly unlikely with this disturbance, or any disturbance, even if it's there, doesn't seem to be a big problem at all. Just the background state not going to allow that to develop at all, and I don't think we're going to see much in the way of development at all, even in the next 10 days. Now, the GFS model does have some development out here over the Bay of Campeche yet again, but there's a lot of uncertainty on that for right now, and it is to be seen on what models will do with that. If we look at the Canadian model, we're not seeing much in the way of development at all with that system. It's all down here in the Eastern Pacific. Now, of course, the Canadian model has a different scenario here, which once again, Canadian is just as accurate as any other model and cannot be relied on, because if we go back to one run, it's not even there. This run, it's there. So just be careful. Anything beyond 7 days, folks, don't rely on the models. Please don't. This early in the season, there's a lot of uncertainty that models have a hard time with in terms of where and when these tropical waves develop, where they develop, and if they're going to get organized at all. Yes, the oceanic conditions are pretty favorable for that. We see that, okay? We see that in the models. We see that on sea surface temperature maps. But sometimes things don't cooperate. We could have a really favorable setup for tropical cyclones with the sea surface temperatures, but does the atmosphere agree? It's not agreeing. And partially what I think is, and I'll mention this to a lot of you that are watching this, and some of you don't have to agree with me on this. I strongly believe, even so, we have our La Nina that is developing, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. The atmosphere, the relative aspect to the atmosphere, what we call the oceanic atmospheric coupled wave pattern, is not responding to La Nina yet. It is just not responding to that. And some of you are like, how is it not, David? There is some proof behind the scenes that I'm going to show you that is proof. Indeed, there's evidence of that to back this up. So the European model also is strong, is in pretty good agreement that no development is expected. This is the vorticity map. Now, I'm going to try to be more simple with my videos and save more of the detail for my live streams. So what I'm going to probably end up starting to do more, at least for the tropics, and might introduce this for my fall forecasts as well as my winter time maritime stuff, is at least do 2 or 3 live streams a week on anything on the weather, and then just do our basic weather videos for more people that are not interested in hearing what does vorticity mean, what does this mean. That way I can get to your guys' questions if you do have, okay, what does vorticity mean, David, right? So hopefully that helps out a lot. So we're going to do 50-50. I'm going to try. As long as my room stays nice and cool, we should be fine. It's going to be hard this weekend, though, since I have family visiting. All right, so another product that I like to look at. Oh, wait, now let me finish the European model. So, of course, there's nothing. Now, I want to make it clear, there is some tropical wave activity out here, but there's no indications that we're going to get anything to develop. Okay, we're going to enter a quiet spurt in the deep tropics. Yes, there's a couple of little ambiguities here, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We got a little bit of wave here and here, but it doesn't mean it's going to develop. All right, let's not try to scare and hype and gripe on things because it's not the way forecasting should be done these days. We have to be careful. And there are times when we have active periods and there are times when we have quiet periods. And we're entering a quiet period right now for late June into early July, maybe even into mid-July perhaps. But there are signs that might change in mid to late July. So looking at the deep layer moisture plot, so brown colors indicate drier air in the deep layers and turquoise colors indicate more moisture in the atmosphere, so high relative humidity, more convection, more available potential energy for storms to get going under the right circumstances. Well, in this case, the GFS model over the next 3 days, yeah, we have that disturbance. It's going to be moving in this southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's not going to really impact the United States at all. And then we got more moisture. But what I do not see here is any well-defined wave pattern, okay? Other than maybe a little bit of a wave break off right here that might, again, will likely bring in some enhanced shower and thunderstorm activity, but nothing that worries me at all. I'm not seeing anything unusual that pops out to me that would otherwise grant us a busy season. Yet, even if we look at the latest GFS model, we're not seeing anything at all. Okay, this Bermuda high, this Azores high out here, just too strong, and it's keeping things really suppressed. All right, and you've got a lot of dry air. Like, this is all Saharan dust. More than likely, embedded within this, all of this is all that dust coming off of Africa. And yes, this is typical. People are thinking that, oh, we have a lot of dust coming off of Africa. This is going to be a bust type of season. All right. This is climatology. Once again, June and July are our quiet months. Usually in late July, even sometimes in mid-July, the Saharan dust begins to wane away. So we have a little bit of a ways to go. And the fact that the Saharan dust moving off of Africa started later than it should be, and some of you are like, no, it's on time, David. Usually we don't get Saharan dust outbreaks to begin until late May or early June. We're kind of a little bit behind schedule with that. So I'm afraid that the atmosphere, because of our El Nino pattern, we just kind of got out of that pattern somewhat, and the pattern has to adjust to a La Nina, and there's a delay to everything. So we're beginning to see that summer pattern probably get going now, and I feel like the atmosphere right now is kind of in a early June state, if that makes sense, and it's delayed. So if we go forward in time here, we can see how our Saharan dust is going to be a thing at least for the next 5 days. That is a guarantee. All these purple colors indicate a lot of Saharan dust coming off of Africa, that dry, warm, dusty air. And for one thing, it's not just a lot of dust, but it's also pretty far south still, relatively speaking. And usually we want all this dust to kind of move off in this general direction. All right, we don't want it to head this way like what it's doing. So that's why the tropics also are not going to be very active. The Cape Verde season, not ready to go yet. So another product that I like to show you all. Oh, wait, did I? Oh, okay. That's funny. I thought I switched it. All right, so here it is. Here's the Saharan dust. Thank you, well-reasoned, of signing up to becoming a member. So here's, again, that dust. There's just so much of it. It's just not going to be elusive to tropical wave development. It's just not going to happen. You all can say, oh, we're going to have a wave, David. Believe me, sneaky development is possible. The background state does not tell me enough of that at all, and I just don't think it's going to happen. More so on that in just a second. What we're looking at here now, let's go and switch scenes. Let's go over to the GFS model. And this is what we look at. This is the velocity potential, okay? And this is an anomaly. Is there areas of sinking motion in the atmosphere, suppressive convection, or are there areas of rising motion in the atmosphere, enhanced thunderstorm convection? Green areas, that is what we look for. We want to see green areas because that's divergent flow aloft. Divergent flow aloft means air has to fill that void and we get upward motion. That makes thunderstorms possible. So let's go forward in time and let's show you what I mean of what I mean. This is now, but watch what happens. Things are going to change. Give it another 5 days and I think we're going to see things really flip. Look at all of this red over the Atlantic. So if I know it's hard to see here, so I'm going to try to outline. This is Africa, right? Okay, this is Africa right in here. This is Central America right in here. So you can kind of get the idea. Here's the United States. All right, I hope that does really good. Look at all that sinking motion. All of that sinking motion in the Atlantic. Not my heyday at tropical formation. It's just not going to happen. This is not just one run. If we go back a couple of runs, it's been pretty consistent. So we can get a general idea, roughly speaking, that we can probably say the tropics for right now are going to get quieter after we get that one disturbance over the southern Gulf to move through. Maybe a wave here and there, maybe a wave left and right, but any development is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get anything going, and that's because the background state, the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, just not going to allow any development. Plus, we have that La Nina keeping things going here with sinking motion. More of this upward motion. Actually, the MJO, now this is probably a little bit lagged because underneath all of this, you actually get enhanced trades doing this. And yeah, you get westerly wind anomalies over here. So usually on this side of the MJO, you're actually going to get a lot more tropical development. So typhoon season going to ramp up pretty quickly here in late June, early July, while much of the Atlantic is going to be shut down for business temporarily. And that's what that indicates. Moreover, when we look at the, let's take a look here. This is another product that I like to use. This is the GEFS, the Global Ensemble Forecasting System. I'm going to include this in my future discussions on in my videos and even live streams. Probably not so much my videos because my videos will end up being too long. Again, I'm gonna try something new here to keep things a little more basic for the general audience and say making every bit of detail possible, and that ending up making these videos like 35 or 40 minutes long. Otherwise, that's how long they would go. If I wanted to, I can really go into detail and my videos could end up being an hour long. Who wants to watch an hour video? Raise your hand in the chat. Probably no one. All right, so this is the ensemble. This is from weathernerds.org. And what people are misunderstanding here is what goes on down here. Okay, yes, there are some members that do indicate some tropical development, but only like 4 or 5 members indicate that. And that's 30 knots. That's tropical depression force. Not one model down here has a tropical storm member on it. So we can use this data and say, okay, so if that many of members are showing a low-grade tropical depression, it's probably a tropical wave. My goodness, look at what's going to happen over here in the Gulf. I really don't think a lot's going to happen with this system in the Gulf. If anything, it becomes a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Weaker than Alberto, and if it did get named, it would be Beryl, but we're not going to pre-name storms because it hasn't developed yet, but just saying we'll have to watch that. But really not a whole lot of model signal from the GEFS right now that we're going to get anything developing at least in the next 7 days. That's 168 hours. And because of the accuracy and precision and the dedication with my discussions here, I'm going to keep the forecasts within 7 days. Rarely do I go out to 10 days. Only if there is absolute need to, that's when I would do it. But for right now, we're going to keep these forecasts 7 days out or 168. If you want to go out to 10 days on your YouTube channel, you can go right ahead. Be my guest. All right, the ECMWF ensemble. Okay, this is the 12Z output for today. There are 51 members that run the ensemble forecast, including the control run and the operational run. And let me ask you guys this question. Let me know in the chat. Where is that disturbance that the GEFS indicated? Where is it on the European ensemble forecast? Let me know, okay? It's not there. It's not there. It literally isn't. It does not exist. And yeah, if there is, I mean, come on. I mean, 20 knot winds, that's barely a tropical depression. Probably not even anything. Actually, that would be 24, 25 mile an hour winds. So yeah, nothing to worry about at all. Shut down for business. You guys can disagree all you want. Some of the weather YouTubers are saying, oh, we might get some development in late June. Until I see it to believe it. And I do not believe it until I see it. And I'm not seeing anything to believe anything that anything will develop in the main development region, in the Caribbean, or across the central MDR region. It's just not adding up. It's just not going to happen. The background state does not allow it. The shear, the dry air, the Saharan dust, not going to allow for any development. And you guys will probably be like, wow, David was actually right than those other YouTubers. Again, I don't want to call out any YouTubers. Everyone has their own opinion. Maybe some of you are saying there will be some development. Some of you, like me, are saying there won't be any development. Because climatology, put that in the back of your mind that, oh, it is June. We're not supposed to see Cape Verde season yet until August. But once it gets going, believe me, folks, I am afraid once it gets going, it won't stop. All right, so another help from this too is from the ECMWF EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System. Very similar to our MJO, similar to this, okay? This is this, but on the European model, okay? And this is more easier to digest because this is a little thumbnail. See this thumbnail down here, folks? I want you all to really look. I mean, if you have to put on those grandma glasses and actually look really closely, you can. I know some of you in this live stream or watching this stream are like in your 60s, 70s perhaps. So I understand that might be hard to see, but pay attention. Okay, this is the thumbnail that I referred to in my past discussions as where the MJO is, the Madden-Julian oscillation. So you get your different phases. So think of that phase diagram that I've recently showed in my previous videos. That's the 1, that's the 1, that's the 2, that's the 3, that's the 4, that's the 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, right? You get the idea. This is the Mercator projection. Stretch the map out, and this is what you get. Your El Nino regions are here. Okay, El Nino 4, 3.4, and El Nino 3, and Nino 1+2, right? That's a different kind of metric that that the MJO is based off of. The MJO is like a short-term El Nino kind of event or Nino thing, and then your El Nino in itself is a more climatological, long-term pattern shift kind of thing, if that makes sense. So when we look at and when the people that monitor the MJO, when they look at, okay, this is going to be in phases 1 and 2 and 3, your upward motion usually is over here, okay, to get a pretty favorable environment. Now, some of you are like, oh, it's upward motion all the time, David, but climatology, the MJO does not make tropical cyclones form. It's just a help. It's just to get the engine started, if that makes sense. So when we look at roughly, this is basically where the where the Atlantic region is. So I've put a box around this. So this whole area right in here. So I'm going to draw lines to help illustrate that. So this is the Atlantic side of the world. This is the Western Pacific side. So the international date line and the West Pacific typhoon season is over here. India and its basin is over here. Okay, if that makes sense. And anything in between, you got your East Pacific hurricane season that's in the middle. It's this area here. That makes, hopefully that clears up the confusion. So these other lines that you see here, these dotted lines are basically time scale lines or timestamps. So if you think about it, right here, it says June 26th. So I'm going to highlight that. June 26th. Actually, let me get my cursor a little bit bigger here. So I'm going to change my cursor thickness so you all can actually see this without, like, where's David pointing to? So let's do that. So this is June 21st right here, June 26th, July 1st, July 6th, July 11th, the 16th, the 21st, the 26th, and this goes all the way out to August the 3rd and the 4th. So it's a long-range forecast from the European model. And these lines are almost like latitude lines. In reality, they're not. They're time scale lines. And so we can kind of get an idea that, okay, where is the favorable conditions going to be at what part of this map and what time will it be? So I strongly believe, all right, much of the Atlantic here is going to enter a more unfavorable state. Now, there is a little bit of a convective coupled Kelvin wave that might ripple across here by the time we go into the 15th and the 21st of July. And that might waken things up in the short term. We might get one or two of these tropical waves that might do some production in terms of our number of named storms. But it really isn't until this kind of comes along and ripples along across Africa. The West African monsoon season really gets going by late July, and once we get into early August, we should start seeing a lot of development, potentially a lot of these waves getting more aggressive. Now, of course, this is a forecast. This is based on the now. This changes every day. But right now, what we're seeing is generally a lot of favorable conditions right now over India, perhaps even over the West Pacific. That's what we're going to be seeing by early July, late June into even mid-July. So when one basin is active, the other basins are usually not active. So if the West Pacific typhoon season is at work, we're not going to see a whole lot of activity in the Atlantic side of things. So this right here relates to with what is all going on throughout the period all in here. And this section right in here is not really favorable. So that is why I strongly think we're not going to see a whole lot of tropical development through at least the 15th of July. That's good news for people that want to go and celebrate 4th of July. You're probably not going to need to worry about any significant tropical systems at all. Good news, thumbs up, 7 up on that. Nothing to worry about whatsoever. Okay, we go through active periods. I will tell you what, it is highly unusual to see a lot of activity in June. In July, for reference, let's go to 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Let's click on that. Let's go to Wikipedia. Who likes Wikipedia? Raise your hand if you absolutely love Wikipedia. I always like to look at what the agencies release, and you can cite those. If you click here, the names of those people are there that release those forecasts. You got to keep in mind, 2020 was highly unusual, but really, I want you guys to point out something. What do you guys notice here on this chart? If I could actually, oh yeah, right here. What do you guys notice? Now, we had named storms, but what did we not have? I want you all to kind of make sure you guys are listening and everything and taking all this information in. This is really important. Okay, we had Arthur. Okay, we had Arthur. We had Bertha. We had Cristobal. We had Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, right? But these were all tropical storms. These were not hurricanes. That is what quality over quantity means. We can get 40 named storms and all of them are tropical storms, or we can get 40 named storms and 95% of them are hurricanes. Does that make sense? Quality over quantity. Just because we're not seeing, okay, if it's a hyperactive season, we should see our A named storm already in mid-May. We should see our B named storm in late May. Our C named storm in early June. Okay, this is normal. We're not supposed to have a lot of activity. And still, if we don't see a hurricane by late August, then we can start talking, or even early September. Okay, we could bunch a lot of activity in. Okay, you can see how many named storms we had in late August through through late September. And look at this. For Pete's sakes, we could have a very busy season until mid-November. Right around my birthday, I remember Iota was a very intense Category 4 hurricane on the cusp of being a Cat 5. One more season I wanted to compare to this with you all was 2005. That was a very similar season. Only it was more devastating, right? Again, a named storm, 2 named storms in June, right? Ta-da! Look at what we get out of everything. 2 major hurricanes in the month of July. It wasn't really until we got into late August into September. We had a lot of hurricanes that season. And that was only 28 named storms. But yet we had 4 Cat 5 hurricanes and 1 Cat 4. We had a lot of major hurricanes. That was a very, very destructive season, to say the least. So my point here being is that, and there we go. My point being here is that, okay, that stream, I hope you all could hear me. Can you all hear me? Just kind of bugged out for a second there. So what I want to tell you all here is that this season is acting like it needs to be for a busy season. Busy seasons could start off dead, quiet from the dead, right? So cool thing I wanted to show you all is, man, I wish I could. Let me zoom this out. See, this is zoomed in a little too much. Maybe that's probably one of the reasons. All right, so hopefully you all can see this pretty well. Let me get rid of my little good old face over here so you all can see this. So this is the latest prediction of how busy this hurricane season could end up being. So we're first going to look at the named storms, the number of named storms. Right now, the average is 23. That's pretty substantial. That is very significant. All right, that is literally all the agencies predict pretty much we're going to use up the entire alphabet and we're going to have to use our auxiliary list of names by the end of hurricane season. Now, you might think, it's not even possible, David. Well, we got 21 named storms last year and we all thought it was going to be dead. Well, it could be more busier this year and it could end up way more active. We have La Nina on our side. So, guess whose forecast? Can you guys point out? Do you guys recognize anything different with this? Okay, we have a lot of agencies, but guess who has their forecast here on a public website? I want you guys to all guess. A little bit of interaction time here. What's up, David Ithram? How are you doing, buddy? Guess whose forecast is on here? You might have guessed it wrong or right. David Schlotthauer's forecast. Yeah, this is my forecast right here that I highlighted. And in my June prediction, I predict 24 to 29 named storms. Okay, so again, 24 to 29 named storms. The ECMWF is up to 26 now, so that's a little higher than its previous forecast. Colorado State University pushing for 27 named storms potentially. Yeah, Colorado State University, pretty bullish. The UK Met Office pushing for 28 named storms. Yeah, it could still happen. All right. The University of Pennsylvania is not on here. Actually, it is in their May prediction. So let me go over to there. And that was their prediction. Up to 39 named storms. So that's what they are predicting. But the latest outcome here, this is the June prediction, May and June prediction roughly. And this is what it is. So now let's take a look at how many hurricanes this predicts. So on this forecast, the average is 11. Now 11 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but that is phenomenal. That is absolutely significant. That is, the normal is 7 hurricanes, and we're 11. So that's a lot of hurricanes to happen, especially the longer it waits and it gets bunched up into like say from late August into early October. That's a lot of hurricanes in a short amount of time. Let me make my mouse a little smaller because it's actually covering up some of the numbering on here. So this is so INSMET is predicting 11 hurricanes. Colorado State University is predicting 9 to 14 hurricanes. I am predicting 10 to 15 hurricanes because when looking back at 2005 and 2020, we had a very high number of hurricanes. So I can see 10 to 15 hurricanes this hurricane season. Again, late July, folks. It's only mid-June. All right, we still have over a month yet to go before we should start looking maybe at a hurricane. All right, ECMWF, the European, is predicting 8 to 14 hurricanes. WeatherWorks, 9 to 13 hurricanes. Tropical cyclone risk, 12 hurricanes are predicted. And look at this, the UK Met going as high as 16 hurricanes. 16 hurricanes, everyone. That's category 1 or greater. That's a lot of hurricanes, if you ask me. And then Storms Geo predicting 12 hurricanes. That's a lot. Now, what about major hurricanes? Let's take a look at that. Colorado State University, 3 to 7 major hurricanes. That's pretty significant. 7 major hurricanes. That's either 7 category 3s or a few category 4s or a couple of category 5s. I predict up to 8 major hurricanes. That is certainly a possibility. 4 to 6 major hurricanes from WeatherWorks. Tropical cyclone risk does predict 6. And there's one other agency, Weather Tiger, also on board with my forecast here at 5 to 8 major hurricanes. So pretty much the average here is 5. So that the average is about 3.5, and we're at 5. So that is a little alarming when you think about it. Now, ACE producing. So how much ACE? So accumulated cyclone energy. Remember, ACE is quality over quantity. All right? You learned a new, hopefully you're all taking notes at this point. So Colorado State University predicts up to 260 ACE points. That is very significant. The average, believe it or not, is right around 90. Right around 90. This is the normal range. Actually, about 120 is on the higher end of the scale. 260 is phenomenal. I predict 210 ACE points. ECMWF pushing as high as 324 ACE points. That's a hyperactive season. And then UK Met going for 293 ace points. That's very concerning. So everything tells us the season's going to be busy. It doesn't need to start in May or June. It could wait until July. Well, we had Alberto. So if you want to be specific, we're going to have another, let's see, let's just do this. We're going to have another, well, we have a little ways to go. We have another 23 to 28 name storms to go, right? Because we have had one during the season. So to subtract one from every one of these agencies. All right, unless they just updated their forecast today and did not include Alberto in their forecast, which would be a mistake if you didn't include that. Okay, so now some of you are asking, okay, we have a La Nina, David, but you're saying it's an El Nino. What are you freaking talking about? All right, so of course, when we go to cyclonic, I always like using cyclonic, by the way, for my sea surface temperature analysis. So when we look at our ENSO region, we are seeing a La Nina. Okay, there's a signal of that. There is cold water being upwelling over Peru right now. We're seeing anomalous 2.8, in some cases, even as cold as -3 Celsius below average. That's pretty chilly. We got a good negative PMM, which stands for Pacific Meridional Mode. I know it's a little tongue twister. If you did not hear that. Pacific Meridional Mode. It's due to stronger North Pacific ridging that allows for stronger northerly gradients to develop over the East Coast or over the Eastern Pacific along California. And this helps to upwell more cooler water and get that La Nina going. So, yes, we do have a La Nina, but you're going to hear this term, and Ben Knoll has jumped ahead of me on this one. Relative Nino Index. Relative Oceanic Nino Index. So it's a atmospheric coupling wave pattern to our sea surface temperatures. Sea surface temperatures mean one thing, but the atmosphere has to adjust to that. Makes sense? And so when we take a look at this, okay, we have a La Nina. Okay, this should mean a very busy season. But our SOI does not tell us that very well. All right, yes, our Southern Oscillation Index, for simple reasons, not going to get into a whole lot of detail, it's the pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin, which is in the northernmost portion of Australia, with Tahiti, which is, let me just show you guys really quick where this is actually at. So there's two pressure stations that get measured on a daily basis. We got one over Darwin, and then we get another measurement over here over Tahiti. So you take these two, all right, even so the pressure looks the same between these two, one is higher than normal and the other one is lower than normal. So you would divide and do a lot of mathematical equations to calculate the SOI. And you could actually go onto the About page and they tell you on how it's calculated. Simply, when you take the pressure the pressure index from Tahiti and Darwin, the standard deviation equals that from the standard deviation. So that's what that really means. And so this is important because in relative sense, in the 90-day average, okay, so let's take away our 30-day average. Our 90-day average is -4. So we're still on the cusp of a weak El Nino type pattern in the atmosphere, which makes perfect sense. That's probably why we're not jumping to business with the hurricane season this go around. Now, the reason why the Atlantic was so busy during the 2020 period is if we actually go back and look at the same thing, okay, hopefully this clears up your guys' minds and better understands why we see what we see and why we see what we don't see. All right, so when we look back at 2020, all right, we had a La Nina or a weak neutral-ish we went into a La Nina during that late summer of 2019. We had a La Nina already, so the atmosphere had time to adjust to that La Nina. Okay, I hope you all are following me on this. So the atmosphere had time to adjust during that whole 12 months. The problem here is now we have come from a very strong El Nino during the winter season, and we've just done this pelly flop into a relatively cool ENSO state. I mean, think about it a year ago. This is last year, folks. Think about the difference that makes. This explains why I believe the season is off to a slow start, because the atmosphere has to readjust. It's kind of like not wanting to go to sleep at night. Just because it's dark, you don't have to go to sleep, right? If it gets dark at 9 o'clock, you might not go to sleep until 1 in the morning. But wait, it gets light at 5:30 or about 6 in the morning, right? But you're still sleeping in until 10 in the morning, right? Your body has to adjust to that daylight again. So your body wakes up, if that makes sense. And it has to adjust for sleep time when it starts getting dark, if that makes sense. So think about this. The atmosphere, the fluid in the air is delayed. Okay, it's probably beginning to wake up from in the El Nino state, which is a good thing because the longer this waits, the less impacts we might end up having. And it's okay to have a wrong forecast. It really is. This is a learning curve for a lot of us as forecasters. Things are there for a busy season, but what may not allow for a busy season is this redundant, this delayed effect of ENSO, if that makes sense. I do believe we're going to have a really busy season, but it might wait until August or September instead of what we had in 2020. Because I'll tell you what, we could be in a very bad situation right now where we do have a 2020 season where we don't get a break and where people panic and freak out. So consider that, man, this is good that it's not busy. Other than we had 2 disturbances, one of those got named. Okay. But boy, I've seen it a lot busier. But just think about it. When it was busy in 2020, we were only seeing tropical storms. Follow me? You guys follow me on that? So, yeah, this is a good learning curve. Quality beats quantity, right? Late season, we might get more major hurricanes versus an early start to the season, we get more tropical storms. So, yeah. Whoa, 53 minutes. Boy, I blew the bucket on that one. Very long discussion. Do you guys have any questions? Any questions? You guys have a lot of questions. I'm very sure I'm open up to questions. Don't freak out and be like, oh, I don't want to ask David a question. Please ask them because I am going to try. I'm smiling for a reason, folks. I'm going to be trying my very hardest at doing these at least 2 or 3 times a week. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to patternize things. So maybe every other day we do a live stream. Every other day we do a video discussion. How does that sound? Let me know what you guys think about that. Because I do feel bad that I have not been live streaming. I know a lot of other YouTubers out there have been live streaming a lot recently. And I'm like, I'm sitting over here not live streaming on anything. So, I am going to be looking into doing that. Tomorrow, I will probably live stream again just because we're going to end the week on a bright note. And then Sunday and Monday, you saw my schedule on the community post. If you haven't, please go check that out. I will not be available for those 2 days. I have family visiting from Florida. Yeah, I'm glad my mom is able to get away from Florida for once because it's hot, humid. It's been rainy over there. It's been kind of a disaster. So it's good to see you in sunny side California. I'll tell you that. So that will be nice. And, you know, when I haven't seen family for nearly 10 to 15 years, I want to spend as much quality time with them. So I won't have videos out those 2 days. So, but then I will be back on Tuesday. I should be back on Tuesday with content. But please ask me your questions. We're not ending the stream until I feel like a lot of questions have been answered. All right, I will sit here all day until until I think all the questions have been answered. So yeah, my schedule is on community post. I will be doing a YouTube live stream or video. That's the time range, either 11:30 or 2:45 ish. All right, anything in green is upload days. So yeah. RO Force, what's up? By the way, I do like your Blender modeling stuff. When you make things on Blender, that's pretty cool. Well, you're ready to become a weather model, aren't you? So let's see. Why South Carolina? So I'm gonna start up here. Hey, what about Miami, Florida? Let's see. I like how you think about weather changes way faster. All right, so we'll start on Dachshund, and I'll work my way down the list. So if I don't get to your question right away, just type it up in the chat again. But I'm working my way down. All right. So do you think by the time it hits August that we're going to have another Hurricane Isaias? Because I live in the Northeast. Because of the Azores high being stronger this year, and there's already evidence of that, you can definitely see this big sprawling ridge of high pressure. Actually, another way to look at this is looking at the 500 millibar layer. And yes, there is different layers that I refer to because there's many reasons why I do that, because we can't just look at one layer of the atmosphere. So actually we're going to use, this one. So the Azores high this year has been pretty strong, actually. It's extending all the way over here. And so my prediction is that a lot of these storms are going to hit here or even go down here and move into, say, the southern Gulf of Mexico. Some, we might get a couple of fish storms that do this, and then sometimes they might want to loop around and maybe hit the Northeast. Yeah, remember Hurricane Henri? That thing did a little weird jog. It went down like this, and then it went out, and then it kind of stalled, and then it went back out like that. Right? We could have systems like that. Predicting the Northeast is very tricky because you need an atmospheric setup that allows those systems to hit the Northeast. I would say at least one or maybe two of those could be possible for the Northeast. Are they going to be strong or weak? We don't know. It's very hard to predict the Northeast, but at least one or two named storms are certainly on the docket. All right, so let's scroll down here. Carson Dobler says, hey, David, what do you think about Florida getting hit this year? Florida definitely at ground zero. You already have gotten a testimony of some big-time moisture from something that was not very significant at all. Okay, well, not even a tropical storm or anything, and yet you had a lot of moisture moving over that area. So my point being here is, yes, Florida is definitely in ground zero trouble. Absolutely. I think it's going to be a really nutty season for Florida, especially for the southern half of Florida. Doesn't look very good at all. Rainy Rives, hey, what about Miami, South Florida? Again, like I talked about, lots of activity likely, especially in August, late July, early to mid-August, but especially mid to late August is when I think the season's just going to take off like a rocket. It's going to be one of those seasons where it's like this and then poof, where it just blows up. It just takes off. I've seen it for myself, folks. We could have one named storm a week, and then the next week we could have 6 or 7 named storms. Right? You saw it in 2020. We had 6 or 7 named storms at once. It could change in a heartbeat. All right. So let's see. Live streams are cool. Thank you. Star, why South Carolina never get any bad weather, David? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I would hate for South Carolina to get bad weather. It's just where you are at. You get that. So during the late summer, early fall period, the jet stream starts picking up. So you get these westerlies, right? They move like this. You get easterlies here. So you get this ridge that's squashed. And so you're kind of in the dominator of that. So that's probably one of the reasons why you don't get a whole lot of bad weather. And consider yourself lucky. Like California, we don't get bad weather until usually January and February. And we're fortunate that we get some good weather. So my point being is, be lucky where you live. You don't want any bad weather, right? But it's just the way the patterns are. Atmosphere is a fluid these days. All right. RO course. Yeah, hey there, of course. Grade D54. I truly believe that this season will be more quality than quantity. And both Southeast Coast and the Gulf states need to continue their preparations. Good point. So we might get 24 named storms, but how would you like it if we got 300 ace points? 300 ace points. What if we get several long-tracked, intense, violent hurricanes? Then the short-lived surprise ones, right? That's what he's referring to. Quality over quantity. We might have more intense hurricanes this year, but it only takes one, folks. It only takes one hurricane to ruin a lot of homes and a lot of lives. Okay? It only takes one. Ian, Laura were the beasts of them all, right? Iota, Delta also were. Sally was. So you got to put that into perspective that, you know, it only takes one. The season can be very active with one major violent hurricane. Yeah, that's all it takes. One and only. All right, so, all right. Let me make sure I'm caught up here. Boy, David, how does Florida look for a storm? Again, Florida is not going to get anything in the long term other than pop-up showers and storms every day. I don't see anything that concerns me at all on the GFS or the European model. Believe me, folks, other YouTubers. Now, I cannot say you don't watch those people. Watch those YouTubers however you want. Freedom of speech over here. But I'll tell you what, if they're going to predict systems in late June, think twice. Like, okay, look at the models for yourself and decide. I'm really being careful as far as how I predict things because some people will be like, all right, the bit rate is a little low. So we got to really just be careful on what we predict. And I feel like I see things because I've experience over this. I really do. 7-8 years of experience over the tropics since 2016. All right. Let's see. What do you think about Florida getting hit by a major hurricane this year or even hurricanes? Again, a lot of people are asking about Florida. Florida is going to get hit a lot. And the reason why I say that is if we look at our CANSIPS model, look at all the green in August. All that green is above average rainfall, which could mean more, lots of tropical systems, lots of hurricanes, perhaps not a lot of hurricanes, but maybe 1 or 2 hurricanes. Very active season. But remember, we're here and we're headed here. So you can see how the pattern really transitions by the time we go into July and August. I do agree, grade D 54. I do agree with that very much. You need, and grade D does point that out. Please continue your preparations, folks. Nature's probably being very nice at this point, and she's like, oh, we'll give them an extra month to get prepared. Because once the season starts, folks, it could be very bad. It could end really bad for a lot of lives and a lot of people. Okay. So South Carolina does get bad weather via Hugo and Matthew. But that's really, again, that's 2017 kind of deal. But you get the idea. It doesn't happen very often in the Carolinas. fortunately. Florida is a whole different story. Um, if most of the accumulated cyclone energy was over the seas of that 300 number, yeah, then you would say in retrospect to land interactions, it would be a very inactive season. But at that point, a busy season is a busy season based on the number of named storms and the ACE points. And ACE is accumulated cyclone energy. And actually, you can see that here. If we go to cyclonic.com, which, by the way, is a very good website, I would highly recommend to a lot of you that should check this out. It is very good. You get your ACE graphs. So right now, North Atlantic, we're only up to 0.77 ACE points. That is ranked 41 out of 74. And guess what? This was a slightly above average season down here. Okay, look at this. 145 ACE points, 2008. And then look at this. Very busy season here in 1996. That was ranked, the ACE points were only slightly higher. So my point here is that dead seasons could end very wild. Like we could have something that looks like this, and then all of a sudden we can make it up very quickly, right? We could end up in the top number of this. The later we wait, then the more certain we get about things. All right, so so do you think any strong systems will impact the Florida Panhandle? It is very much possible, RO Force. It is very much possible. Based on that Azores high, right now the way this looks, you can picture on if a storm does move this way, it is going to go around and it's going to go like that. So you can follow where the air mass is. This is a pretty strong high over here over the Gulf of Mexico. And you can even trace that out by looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly. This is a lot of strong ridging over here. So a lot of these systems, if they did develop, they would move like this. Now, not so much like this and out. That makes sense. Okay. Is a gyre just an area of low pressure? Yes, it is, Clinton. It is an area of low pressure, but occasionally what we might get, if we look at this, sometimes we get these little vortices, these little perturbations, and this is why I use this map, folks. I don't use it to make it hard for you all to understand. This is what forecasters will often use as vorticity, how much spin there is. Conservation angular momentum, or conservation angular momentum is what it is. And so think about a ballerina dancer on an ice skating rink. If she puts her arms all the way out, she's going to spin slower because a lot of her energy, or a lot of the conservation angular momentum is being spread out in a larger area. Versus if you pucker in like this, you're going to spin a whole lot faster. Okay, and that's why you see ballerina dancers spreading their arms out. They'll do all these whatever things on the ice skating rink, and then they'll pucker in, and they'll really, really start spinning fast. So another way, this tropical, or this area, Alberto, had its arms spread out far and wide, and that is why Alberto was not Alberto. I want to make that clear. I almost said Alberta. Did not become a hurricane because it was just too broad in nature. And when we get these vort maxes like this little guy right here, this is a little more tighter vort max, but because this high is pretty strong, we got a lot of dry air. You can see the dry air around this system. That's why it's not developing. You need moisture, you need very little wind shear, and you need the background state to cooperate to get these systems to go, if that makes sense. All right. That's why that was an exception, this little system. And then the next ones after that, very hard to see. Now, you might see on the GFS, like I said, these little vort maxes that try to spin up. The GFS, let me give you a little biased kind of secret here about the GFS. Anything that comes off of Venezuela, the ABC Islands here, any little vort max you see, the GFS likes to go crazy with it. It's very biased over here. in the ABC Islands, and it likes to spin things up for no reason. I mean, gosh, this little area right here, you could be like, oh, there's a little tropical cyclone trying to form on that. We could always say that forever and ever, days on end, that it's trying to form. But look at the background state. Ridge over here, not going to allow that. Anything that forms here is going to go right off into the Eastern Pacific. Very suppressive phase in formation here over the Atlantic. What's up, Aiden? Yo, I have watched your channel since 2019. Awesome. I'm very interested in storm when it comes to hurricane season. Yes, of course, we are all interested in a storm system, a hurricane, or a major hurricane. Gosh, I am really interested on why Lee exploded when it did. Likely because of the very little wind shear that it was in and a lot of the upper ocean heat content, right? Sometimes models are not perfect either. Sometimes they'll forecast one thing and then what comes out on the other side could be a very strong system or very weak. The NAO is trying to go negative. So that would mean a weaker high, if I am correct on that. Yes, the NAO is trying to go negative, all right? And that does influence on what goes on in the Central Atlantic. But again, climatology, folks, climatology, all right? There's more than just one thing. The NAO is a part of it. The MJO is a part of it. The convective coupled Kelvin wave events is one of that. Sea surface temperature are another part. All right, things gotta come together, and you hope they don't. If they do come together at the wrong time, then we could be in trouble. We could really be seeing a lot of big systems, and I am concerned, folks. And I don't say this lightly, not to cause hype, not to cause freakouts. But I am very concerned we could have a few intense or violent hurricanes this season. I can see it happening. I can definitely see it happening because of our upper ocean heat content. As high as it is, sea surface temperatures are just ridiculous. So the NAO, it could. It depends on where the Azores high develops. All right. Any more questions? Any more questions at all? We had 120 people watching, so thank you guys for tuning in to today's live stream. Again, I will try to do at least 2 or 3 of these. I cannot guarantee week by week is different because I have to go with the flow of my work and other things like that. There might be times I only do 1 stream a week, and there might be a time I don't do any a week and I could only have time to do videos, or there might be times I do 3 live streams a week or 4 live streams a week. But I try to get at least 50-50 on the channel. If I do 6 videos or 6 content pieces a week on the channel, that's 1 per day. That is 3 streams by 11 or by 3 videos. 3 videos, 3 live streams make 6 content pieces. We got away the last few years. Think this year, sadly, we'll have more hits. More than likely, probably, because of the pattern. If we look at the CANSIPS model for that, we can see, go on to our precipitation anomaly. Yeah, that's a lot of above average right there. And if we look at the North American, or wait, North something, NMME, you can see, like, look at all above average, crazy. So this could be a very, again, models are only giving us a general idea what might happen, but this season could either perform for the better, as in maybe only 15 named storms, or we could have a season that we've not seen yet, where we have a lot of impacts to land areas, a lot of landfalls. We already have seen 1 landfall, folks. 1 landfall, and it's our first named storm. So that means if we get 5 or 6 more landfalls that could approach some records for the most landfalls with the hurricane season that we're in. So I just want you guys to be safe out there when it comes to the hurricane season. Take the time now to get prepared, because once it's too late, it's too late. And don't wait for the last minute. Get ready, and get ready now, because once it starts, I'm afraid we're going to see something that looks more like this, where it's kind of dead, and then whoop, we make up and we can get really busy on our graph. Oops, let me zoom this out. We could see something that looks like this, and then, you know, it could stay really active longer this year. And I predict we might still have a named storm to contend with, maybe even into early December. Think about that. Yeah. If you draw a line straight from, say, right about December 1st, that is about a little more busier than it is on average in June. So just think about that in that sense, that we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. Climatology, folks, keep that in your mind. Saharan dust is normal this time of the year. Dry air outbreaks are normal. Suppressive convective development is normal. All right. What is not normal is if you see 4 or 5 named storms or 6 named storms by this period. Then there's a problem. Yeah, it looks like the Caribbean is definitely going to be busy this year. However, Diana, looks like the monsoon season for our area is going to be really low this year. I am not seeing much of a monsoon season for the Four Corners. Probably one of the driest monsoons on record, perhaps. Could be a very troubling year for the desert Southwest, as well as even the Pacific Northwest. Could be a really troubling year. Not much of a monsoon, which means really hot temperatures. We could have some of the hottest temperatures on record this summertime. We're already seeing that in portions of Arizona over the next couple of days, with temperatures at or above 115, maybe close to 118 degrees there. It could be really bad. All right. Something like that, yeah. All right, if you guys did enjoy today's live stream, please consider hitting that like button. We're almost up to 100 likes on this live stream. Also, share this live stream with your family and friends, and subscribe to the channel. I do plan on at least doing 1 to 3 live streams a week on the tropics. All right, severe weather going to settle back a little bit. We do have some severe weather, but I mean, what's the whole purpose? Streaming a slight risk every day. Well, I could do that if I wanted to. Maybe I'll have to include that with one of my live streams during the week. Something that I'll have to consider. All right. And I think no more questions, anyone? No more questions. Last call for questions. Last call for questions. If you have that question that is stuck in your brain and you desperately want to spit it out, do so right now before I call it a day, because I actually have to help spray paint a fire pit outside. Yep, when it rains and when we use that fire pit a lot, it gets rusted. Metal rusts like that. So we have to spray it with high durability, high quality, high temperature black paint. You know, doesn't rust and get damaged. So this year will be hyperactive. I still believe so, yes. It still looks like it will be a hyperactive season, but probably not until mid-August, maybe even early August, I would say. From about early August until probably early or mid-November. We're going to really have to watch for some big spurts of activity. All right. Going once, going twice, going thrice, going cuatro, going cinco. Yes, what is it, Carson? You just said my name, David. The East Pacific is completely dead. Are there going to be any storms? Probably a few. I'm predicting at least 10 to 15 named storms in the Pacific this year. In the East Pacific, that is. I just painted my fire pit. Oh, nice, Greg. Nice. Nice. Yeah, wonderful. I know, Diana. I know. It's already 100 degrees here. It is actually 94 outside right now. It's supposed to be 105 tomorrow. That's going to be fun. It's supposed to be 105 here. Back to the warm and kind of dreary conditions out there. Can I storm chase with you, David? I'm not in the Midwest, so probably not now. Thanks, David. Good night. Remember to like and subscribe, everyone. I agree. All right. Well, anyways, that's going to sum it up for today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion in live format. If you guys do like this content, share, like, and subscribe. And I'll be back with you tomorrow with probably another live discussion on the tropics. I'll end the week very more diligently awesome with that. So if you did like this, hit the like and subscribe button. And I'll be back with you tomorrow.